We have just entered the quietest part of Destiny 2's wettest season, so I think it's high time we dry off and heat things up with the recent update to Skyburner's Oath. Now, a little extra scorch stacks seems minor on paper, but it's a perfectly sized buff that serves as a key to the solar summer fun every Guardian craves. Today's video is half deep dive, half build guide, but 100% spicy. Now, with the launch of Solar 3.0 and Season the Haunted, which was last year, Skyburner's Oath got a rework of its base functionality and its exotic perks, essentially adjusting the weapon to fire at 150 rounds per minute in both firing modes. Its hip fire slug shot that scorches targets, and its hit scan ADS, which is typical of a scout rifle. Recently in update 7.1 though, the amount of scorch stacks applied has been increased from 3 to 5 at base, and from 5 to 10 while using the Ember of Ashes fragment. Now, as a reminder, scorch stacks deal damage over time. If a target receives 100 stacks of scorch, they will ignite, exploding and damaging nearby targets. Now, on its own, Skyburners is now a serious contender for handling champions. With 20 shots in a magazine and a generous 1 meter or so splash range to apply scorch, it's easy to clear small groups of trash ads or trigger multiple ignitions on a single target, such as a champion or a boss. Those ignitions lay the foundation for a multitude of builds, not just because there's so many ways to spec into solar damage, but because of how Destiny 2's engine handles these effects in the first place. While it takes 100 scorch stacks to cause an ignition, the source of that first scorch is far more important. If the initial scorch is applied from a weapon like Skyburners, the ignition that follows inherits that designation. It's not just an ignition, it's a weapon kill with all the perks attached. Any buffs to the weapon's damage from surge mods or exotics apply to ignition as well. Now, this includes anti-champion functionality, which may override the intrinsic anti-unstoppable function of ignitions. Conversely, if you begin scorching a target with an ability and finish the ignition with Skyburners, those weapon traits are ignored. Leave in mind only the base damage and functionality. In Season 21, with anti-overload scout rifles, this allows a single gun to have 2 anti-champion functionalities, if you pay close attention to how you're dealing the scorch. Alright, cool, Cross. That's a nifty detail, but is it actually useful? I believe it is, guys. The utility lies in the build. Skyburners applies 10 scorch stacks per shot with ashes equipped. But I will admit, landing 10 hipfire shots at this low rate of fire for just 1 ignition is slow. Not to mention the fact that red bars would be dead from scorch after just 1 or 2 shots. However, those 10 stacks unlock the potential of incendiary grenades, which at base applies 60 scorch stacks to a target plus an additional 30 thanks to Ember of Ashes. Therefore, a single grenade and a single shot from Skyburners will allow you to reach that 100 scorch stacks, thus granting you an ignition. Now, this pairing makes for one of the easiest, fastest, and low-cost ignition triggers in the game. It's really useful across any class. 1 hipfire shot, 1 grenade, easy kabloomies. To harness it, we simply build into increasing weapon damage, ignition efficacy, and grenade uptime. And with your solar subclass equipped, all fragments should support scorches and ignitions. The most crucial, as I've mentioned, is Ember of Ashes to increase all scorch stacks in its application by 50%, and Ember of Char to allow ignitions to then spread more scorch stacks. With your remaining 2 slots, we do recommend Ember of Singeing for faster ability regeneration and Eruption for deadlier ignitions. But again, these can be adjusted depending on your build. Now, armor mods are just as important and can stay roughly the same for each class. On your helmet, you have Harmonic or Solar Siphon with Ashes assets, which will provide orbs and super energy, arms, firepower, impact induction, and font of focus to keep grenades charged. Chest mods are flexible, but it's definitely worth running charged up for more armor charge stacks. For our legs, we have solar weapon surge mods all the way. On your class item, distribution, bomber, and power finish, all are great options. Now, the gameplay loop. High grenade recharge ensures the 1-2 combination with Skyburners and incendiary grenades is constantly available. Because so many scorch and ignitions will count as weapon kills, your siphon will be pumping out non-stop orbs. Finally, weapon surge mods increase solar weapon damage, 1 being 10%, 2 being 17%, and 3 being 22%. You can actually see it right here at Carl, guys. An ignition sourced from a grenade deals around 42,000 damage, nearly identical to the ignition source from a weapon without surges. But with that 22% weapon surge bonus, that number increases to over 57,000. So a nice little bump there in damage, especially if sourced correctly. Now, this brings us to our exotics. To really nail this build, we needed to test every piece of exotic armor that either increases solar weapon damage, scorch efficacy, or grenade uptime across all classes to really identify the best performers. I'm gonna run through these now, giving every class the best exotic pairing for Skyburner's Oath and its new buff. Warlocks. Honestly, guys, y'all have the least synergy. Part of the reason is because Warlock's solar functionality is already so strong and dialed that simply adding a scorch gun doesn't do much to really enhance things. Your most popular exotics in this context would be Sunbrazers or even Dawn Chorus, neither of which which really fit the loot very well. Sunbracers only ties into solar grenades, which simply don't put out Scorch fast enough to compete with incinerators. Dark Chorus buffs increases Scorch damage, but doesn't actually increase the stacks, which yes, causes weaker enemies to burn out, but actually results in you getting less ignitions. It's kind of a double-edged sword there. The clear winner though for Warlocks is still Verity's Brow, which relies on solo weapon kills to recharge grenades. And add into encounters, this is actually perfect. Scorch enemies with Skyburners, lob an incinerating grenade to ignite them all, and each resulting ignition counts toward the Death Rose exotic perk that refunds grenade energy. It's a great loot, but once all abilities are expended, you are at the mercy of your cooldowns. So again, choosing your armor stats and mods accordingly will make all the difference. Now for my hunters, those cooldowns are a little less of an issue thanks to your dodge, which allows you to twist this build just a little bit. We started by looking at things like Bombardiers, considering we just did a PvP build with Bombardiers with Strand, and let me just say, it is so much fun. But if you combine Bombardiers with Solar, that dodge bomb applies 60 Scorch stacks with Ember of Ashes. And keep in mind though, the radius of Scorch is narrow, and the amount is not enough to trigger the ignition, which honestly is super unfortunate. I wish the radius was larger. Now we also tried Frosties, as it allows us to recharge pretty much everything very, very quickly. The problem with this is every second you're sprinting and proccing Frosties, you're not actually shooting Skyburner's Oath. Turns out, the dark horse here is actually Radiant Dance Machines. In update 7.1, Radiants were tweaked to extend the duration of infinite multi-dodge after kills. Conveniently, Hunter's Knife Trick melee deals up to 90 Scorch stacks with Ashes equipped. So using Gambler's Dodge to instantly refund melee energy, Scorch targets with Skyburner's Oath, ignite them with Knife Trick, and doing it in this order still counts as a weapon kill. This extends your multi-dodge, allowing you to repeat this as long as there are enemies to burn. The downside here is, of course, your vulnerability, being so close to enemies for so long, but since the ignition can be triggered by melees, it's easy enough to swap to healing grenades if you're looking for survivability. Now for our Titans. This is honestly the best one here, guys. Off the rip, the Soul Invictus and Roaring Flame aspects make solo ability kills deadlier to enemies and more helpful to you, thanks to the restoration of sunspots. Not to mention, the Throwing Hammer bonk build mentality fits perfectly with what we've established so far, with impact induction, converting those hammer throws into grenade energy. Now we've looked at several Titan exotics. Looked at Armatarium with its double grenades, which feels great until you have no more nades, and then you gotta wait for cooldowns. For grenade ability regeneration, we also have Master the Quiet One, which is really not that great, but damn it, is this not a sexy exotic? Come on, Bungie, buff this thing. We also have Hallowfire Heart. Very, very good as long as you don't want to pop your super. Turns out though, for ability regeneration, even now, Heart of the Most Light is still the best, as it dips into all of your abilities. Now, as crazy as it may sound, the best option for Titans, even in the current sandbox, with Skyburner's Ignition combo, is Path of Burning Steps. Now, I have very strong feelings about the recent nerf of these exotic legs. And believe me, guys, this is not going to be the last time we talk about these exotics. But the synergy here is still undeniable, and for 3 reasons. 1, we have the damage bonuses. Solar Weapon Final Blows build stacks of Firewalker, which provides the same tier 4 non-stacking damage buff as Weapon Surge mods. The key difference is that Firewalker has a 4th stack that does grant a 25% bonus. Now this brings us to point number 2. Because Firewalker's buffs exceed Weapon Surges without stacking, all of those mod slots on your legs are now freed up for more build flexibility. That's right, guys. You want to put on some other Surge mods, maybe you want to rock Innervation or something there to top off your health, you can do so. And then finally 3, Skyburner's triggered ignitions function as weapon final blows, which actually counts towards Firewalker stacks. This again increases ignition damage, and the cycle continues with much higher damage bonus uptime than that of Weapon Surge, which is why in Lightfall we actually paired it with Polaris Lance, and yes, that ignition damage would scale, and it was a beautiful thing to behold. Burning Steps is still a great synergy option for Skyburners. At the same time, it was wrongfully nerfed, because actually it should be doing even more damage than this. Again, a conversation for another time. Outside of that though, guys, what appears to be just a small change on paper has had a big impact on Skyburner's Oath. No one really cares about Skyburners right now because, well, this past season, when you look at our different surges, whether it's Void or Arc or Strand, Solar is just not a part of that equation. But next season will most likely feature Solar in rotation. And if that's the case, ignitions are going to be our friend. Skyburners is performing a lot better. And I remember last year with our Colonel Mustang build, even though we were making it work, the fact that you had to follow with so many Skyburner shots to get that ignition just didn't sit right with us. Now you're essentially cutting that down in half, thus granting us more kabloomies. So guys, try it out for yourselves. Let me know in the comments below if we missed anything. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.